And I don't want to be sitting there having to scold all of you on Bears Twitter because you're out of control lately. What has been going on? Like, I'm up on the West Coast late at night, and I sit there, and it seems like every evening Bears Twitter is trending for some reason or another. This should be the best offseason that we've ever had. Like, last year was good. That was like going from Star Wars to Empire Strikes Back. Like, it actually builds on what happened last year and is moving the story forward. And yet we still have these petty squabbles, and then we look like idiots. Like, I don't want to sit here. Like, we're on the cusp of drafting Caleb Williams, of having this star-studded offense, a good defense, maybe a great defense, and yet you guys are slinging mud at each other. There's no reason for it. We've already traded Justin Fields. That's done and gone. Caleb Williams is going to be a member of the Bears. There's no doubt about that. Let's all come together and enjoy this. Is this what it was like? Is this what it would have happened if Twitter was around during Jordan's run with the Bulls? Would you guys have been split in the I don't know. I just sometimes can't fathom. But listen, we got a great show for you set up for this evening. So, Sammy, let's go ahead and start the show.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Adam Rank.
It's Hester trying to work it back to the middle. Gets past the first wave, and here he goes. It's Hester inside the 30. Hester's going to take it all the way for a touchdown. And no flag, 92 yards.
The sickest Chicago Bears and fantasy football podcast. Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
It's Wednesday night. You know what that means? It is time for Take It to the Rank, and we are early enough to get you ready for AEW Dynamite, which will be coming up in about an hour. And of course, the Tape Never Lies Network will be kicking off in about an hour and a half. So we will get you done before all of that stuff. Matt Harmon will be joining us here in just a moment, but wanted to go over a few things with you. Now, if you saw this on the Twitter or anything like that, we will be hosting a draft party in Chicago. That's right. Live NFL draft party. I will be in the Windy City to celebrate the drafting of Caleb Williams. More details will be announced in a couple of days, perhaps tomorrow. But we're dotting the I's and crossing the T's and getting that ready for you. So I will be out in Chicago for the first night of the draft, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait to see everybody out there. But again, more details will be coming soon. Also want to address one other thing. Cynthia Freeland, we will not be discussing tonight. I know what she said on Total Access. I know you guys were not happy when she talked about Joe Alt. You're definitely not happy with her talking about Jaden Daniels. But the thing is, she's going to join us here this weekend to discuss her comments. So any questions about that, you can leave that for the weekend. We are not going to talk about it tonight. We will sit down with Cynthia Freeland in a couple of days. She is locked and confirmed for this weekend. But right now, we have one of my favorite people in the NFL space. You might remember him from NFL Media. And of course, he's gone on to be one of the lead analysts for Yahoo Sports. He is also the founder and owner of the Reception Perception, which breaks down all the NFL wide receivers and, of course, some of the top prospects coming into the league this season. And as a matter of fact, for the first time ever this past year, I didn't hit him up for a free membership. I actually paid for it, and it was absolutely worth it. So please welcome back to the show one of my friends, Matt Harmon.
Rank, what's up, buddy? Glad to be on, man.
How you living? How's Virginia treating you?
Things are great. Love the house. Life is awesome. I am discovering, or should I say rediscovering, pollen season. So that is just daily battle with the pollen in terms of getting it out of the pool, in terms of keeping it off the cars. So, that's a struggle, but otherwise life is really good. And I mean, your little rant up at the top about the Bears and the toxicity of Bears Twitter. I do a podcast with Andy Behrens, who's another, tortured Bears fan such as yourself. And he said back in January how toxic the fan base and the situation had gotten. I was like, why? Like this, I don't understand.
It was a civil war over the quarterbacks. There was a lot of people who felt like they should have built around Justin Fields. bring in Keenan Allen, perhaps trade away the number 1 overall pick to get another draft haul. And then there were people who felt very strongly that Caleb Williams should be the choice. And we had hoped that once the decision had been made by Ryan Poles, and clearly it is because Justin Fields is now a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers, we thought it would be done. We thought it would be over. But there are people still arguing to this day, like petty squabbles, which have no business being on the internet for whatever reasons. But unfortunately, it's just one of the things. And hopefully when the Bears start winning some games, this can all be put to rest. But I want to ask you, though, right off the top, since you brought it up, did the Bears, did they make the right decision with Caleb Williams? And do you think he's the right quarterback to take?
I think it's the right decision, and this sounds stupid to say, but I think it's the right decision regardless of the outcome here, like whether Caleb Williams goes on to be a successful quarterback in the NFL. I think this is the right decision to make simply because, like, I like Justin Fields, and I appreciate, I mean, number one, great guy. Really enjoyed meeting him a couple of years ago. He seems like a hell of a dude to root for, and he's super fun to watch. I mean, he's, 230 pounds. He's huge, and he runs like crazy, man. I mean, he makes exciting football for a team that has struggled to have a lot of excitement at the quarterback position. I mean, I know this is somebody that, followed Allen Robinson's career. Like, I talked myself into Nick Foles at times with, following the Bears, right? So yeah. I understand there's that frustration. Like, you're going from that to a guy in Justin Fields who legitimately brings you some juice and some excitement. That being said, like, you look at his efficiency stats from last year, even when you take in the rushing account, he's still like a bottom 10 quarterback in the league. And we're, multiple years into his career now. There's just not a lot of precedent for a guy like that turning around to like a high ceiling quarterback. I think he can be a functional starter. I think he can be a functional starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year. I think it's actually a really nice player to team fit there. But at the same time, you have a unique opportunity here, right? To go, you didn't earn the number 1 pick in the draft. You mentioned up at the top, like this roster is kind of set up to rock, man. I mean, back half of the year, top 10 in weighted DVOA on the defensive side of the football. They've got 2 really good receivers that I'm sure we'll talk about. They've invested in the running back position. They've invested in the tight end position. They've got offensive linemen there. It's not a top 10 offensive line maybe, but it's no longer a walking disaster. You're set to like drop a quarterback prospect in here and kind of go to work. So it's a unique opportunity. I think it would have been a mistake to not take advantage of that. And I do think when you look at these quarterbacks, I like different parts of Drake May's game. I like different parts of Jaden Daniels' games. But, I mean, clearly, I think Caleb Williams kind of stands alone at the top of this class for a variety of different reasons.
No, I'm with you on that one. And for me, and I've said this on the air, and I've said it on this show, that if it's not Caleb Williams, this will be the Sick Podcast Los Angeles Rams or something. I don't know. I'll find something else to do.
I don't think you got to worry about that.
It is, but it is interesting because I know a lot of discussion goes into dumb things about Caleb Williams' phone or whatever. You're a millennial, right? You're not Gen Z, are you? You're millennial.
No.
Solid millennial. But even then,
I'm an old enough millennial to be like, what the hell's going on in Gen Z over there? So that, I'm firmly a millennial.
But does that kind of stuff bother you? Like for me, I think because I remember when I was, being a kid, Jim McMahon growing up, like there were not my parents. My parents were down with Jim McMahon. But I remember there were parents who were like, Jim McMahon's a bad example. He shows up on a moped. He shows up with a beer from being drafted. And like people did not like the punky QB. And now it just feels like those people have grown up. Those children have grown up and now they're mad at Caleb Williams. Are we making too much of all that periphery stuff with him?
I mean, this is just my personal opinion about the matter. I couldn't care less what he does with his fingernails or his phone. I don't care what you do with your fingernails or your phone rank. Like right. Everybody's free to be their own person and do whatever they want to do. Like, and I mean, hey, your phone, that looks great. It looks great for you. I personally just have like the little wallet card thing here on the back of mine. Mine's just black because I'm a boring guy. Like, I think if I walked around with the pink phone, I'd probably look like an idiot because I can't pull it off. But right. You know what? He's pulling it off. It's his thing. That's fine. Let him live his life. Like, it doesn't make a difference to me. And I would say on the other end of it too, like those people that make a big deal about it, they want the oxygen. They feed off the oxygen. Like there's no point in allowing that to continue to fester. So like, And you know what the reality is too? If he wins games and he's as good as he is, like, people are going to be wanting to paint their fingernails like him because he'll be like an icon because of it. So there's nothing that like interests me less than what the guy does with his phone or his fingernails. That's his own business, not mine.
There was a book written a couple of years ago that our old boss, Carmen Dukes, gave me about the 85 Bears. And the writer was a teenager, or he's a college kid at the time of what, and he's like, I dipped Copenhagen because of Jim McMahon. And it's like, that's that's terrible.
That's objectively bad.
If people are running around now, obviously I have a daughter, so this makes a lot more, like, it's easier for me to do it because people will see my daughter with me and they're like, okay,
yeah,
we know who picked that out for him. But yeah, so like if kids are gravitating to Hello Kitty phone cases as opposed to a can of Skull, I think that we've won that one. And I think we're getting a tremendous quarterback. And we talked about it, we just talked about this roster getting set up now. You and I talked last year about DJ Moore and what a great addition that was. Keenan Allen. Again, I love this move for the Bears because Keenan Allen's not coming in and being asked to be the number one guy, but to be a number two guy, or let's say a 1B guy. I think this is, and for a 4th round pick, I think this was one of the best moves of the offseason.
Yeah, I agree. Keenan Allen was in a position where he's coming off the type of year statistically where the Chargers say, hey, we want you to take a pay cut. And he can say, no, thanks.
Please
because no, I'm all set on the pay cut. Find somebody else to pay me that salary. And somebody will be ready to do that. There were other like quality contending teams in the mix. The Houston Texans, he let this leak at his press conference, which was gold, by the way, because usually teams don't want you to find this stuff out. Teams do not want you to know the trades they almost made because of what it tells you. And clearly we see today the Texans go ahead and trade for Stephon Diggs. They were clearly looking for that like veteran route running separation type of receiver. They were involved. The Jets were involved, but the Bears probably a 4th round pick was probably higher than other teams are willing to go. They're in a position where this is a big need for them. Like, they needed another player alongside DJ Moore. And I'm with you. Like, what this does for both of these players, I think is great, because Keenan Allen, for all of the stats that he put up last year, like you look at him on film, you look at him in reception perception, like there has been a dip in his play. There's been a dip in his play as a downfield receiver, but where he's great is as a short and intermediate underneath receiver. I'm sure I'm not the first person to even say this on your show. I'm sure I'm not the first. I know I'm not the first person to say this across the industry. Quarterback friendly. Like, he is a quarterback friendly receiver. And the thing is, though, when you don't have anybody else, you're the Chargers offense of the last few years. Mike Williams isn't consistently healthy. Quentin Johnston isn't popping off. And we're all sitting here ranked on the outside saying, like, why doesn't Justin Herbert throw the ball down the field? But, oh yeah, Keenan Allen's putting up great stats. Well, those two things are linked. Like, when that is your only receiver and you're funneling these short and underneath passes to him, it creates a lot of stats, it creates a lot of fantasy points, but it also creates inefficient, low-yield offense. The Bears don't have to worry about that because, unlike the Chargers, they have a vertical X receiver in DJ Moore who separates at all 3 levels, can win on in-breaking routes, and the way those guys are going to then work off of each other from a route concept standpoint, like you're looking at it, if you're Caleb Williams, you're dropping back there, you're going to be able to have like high-low reads where you have 2 players that you feel very, very confident in. It's not there on like a post route or a dig route with DJ Moore. You come down to not even a check down, but just a true short to intermediate route there with Keenan Allen. That is, I struggled to think over the last few years, like, when's the last time a highly drafted first overall rookie quarterback is dropped into a receiver room with this type of quality? There's not one that comes to my mind, at least.
Yeah, and the Bears they might not be done adding to the wide receiver room, because as much as we talk about Caleb Williams being the first overall pick in the draft, the Bears also have pick number 9, which could afford them a lot of different opportunities to go a number of different ways. They could go at the offensive line. A lot of us looking at Matt Eberflus see a guy who could possibly go defense. They still have a little bit of a need at the pass rush, but one of the big 3 wide receivers could be available for the Bears at number 9. Perhaps they even move up a spot or 2. If you're Ryan Poles, would you be targeting one of those big 3 wide receivers?
Listen, if one of those guys slips to 9, I think you really have to think about it, because Keenan Allen is there on a 1-year deal right now. Maybe they extend him, but regardless, he's getting to a point with the wide receiver position from at an age where your game is, even if it's not truly declining or falling off a cliff. It's changing and it's evolving, just like we said, where he's a guy that gets that separation short and underneath. He catches everything. He's ultra reliable, but he's not scaring you as an outside receiver necessarily. They're still, if they're lining up in 11 personnel tomorrow, like they're playing a game tomorrow, who's that third receiver? Is it Tyler Scott? Right? Like, I mean, Dante Pettis is kicking around the back end of this roster. Like, you'd like something better there. Do you have to spend the 9th overall pick on it? Not necessarily, but if it's staring you in the face, like Rome Odunze falls, I love Rome Odunze's game. I think he'd be a perfect X receiver for them, and then that allows you to do things with DJ Moore that I know we talked about this on the show last year. I think the Panthers didn't get enough from him from like a in-breaking route, yards after catch perspective. I think the Bears did a hell of a lot better job last year than the Panthers did with that. But still, that's something you could really maximize if you have an X like Rome Odunze. But when it comes to kind of the trading up conversation, if one of those guys starts to fall, I'm certainly not going to kill Ryan Poles for it, because I think those guys, all three of those guys are tier 1 prospects. They deserve to go in the top 10, but they only have 4 picks this year. I think maybe it's a situation where they could even potentially trade down. I think that would be a wise move too. But listen, you come away with one of those 3 guys, you're feeling very good from an offensive perspective.
When they talk about 4 picks, you got to also understand that Montez Sweat was drafted for traded a 2nd-round pick for him. Keenan Allen was traded for a 4th-round pick. So even then, like a draft class starts off with Caleb Williams, Keenan Allen, Montez Sweat, and whomever they get at number 9. I think that's pretty good. Like, I think,
oh yeah,
that's a pretty good start. Now, obviously, a lot of people are familiar with your work with reception perception. You go over all the route trees. Now, we sat down with Draft Vogel and went over Rome Odunze this week, and we both really love him. I know that you love him. On your breakdowns, we rarely see this. Like, if you see the route tree, there's always a little red or something. Rome Odunze has all green. Like, what does that mean? Like, is he the best guy in this draft?
I think he is a tier 1 prospect. Like I said, I think all of these guys, my mission statement for this class has been these top 3 guys are all good. They're all tier 1 prospects. Like, you like this guy over this guy? That's cool with me.
Yeah.
That's fine. You like this guy over the other guy? Totally cool. I'm not going to fight you too much on it, but Rome, to me, I think the only thing I will push back on is that it's not a tier of 3, because to me it is a tier of 3. Those 3 guys all belong in the conversation as to who's the best receiver in this class. I have Rome as my 2nd-ranked guy, but in terms of prospects over the last 4 draft classes that I've charted for reception perception, I rank him 3rd overall, behind Marvin Harrison, Jamar Chase, and then Rome Odunze. That's how high of an opinion I have him. I've got him ranked over Devontae Smith, Malik Neighbors in this draft class. Like, I think this guy's that good because he shows you an ability to do everything. He's great in contested situations. We know that, but he's also a really good off the line of scrimmage press coverage receiver. Now, you see a lot of contested situations with him on film because his quarterback's got ultra trust in him. Like, even, and sometimes we'll throw him into those contested situations, but you see a guy that can run all the routes, can get separation like the route chart shows at all 3 levels. I think this guy has a really high floor and a really high ceiling as a prospect. Rank, I'm not the most like aggressive hot take guy in the world.
Yeah,
I don't love to do like crazy comps for draft prospects, but his game really does remind me of Devontae Adams. Like, I don't throw out top 5 in over the last, whatever years, at different times he's been the best receiver in the NFL, period. That's a high praise, but that stylistically, that is who he reminds me of.
No, and I love that. And I love the point that you were making earlier, too, about the availability of Keenan Allen long-term, because I would love to see him perhaps retire with the Chicago Bears, but I love the idea of Caleb Williams coming in. He has those 3 guys. I'm still a big fan of Tyler Scott. Tyler Scott, he does this show, too. So he's usually, during the season, he's with us on Tuesdays. So we're big Tyler Scott guys. I do understand that, but you can't just hand it. And I love Bayless. Bayless and I are buddies too. And it's I understand all that, but it's let's get as many people in here as possible because I just want to go out there and win games. And it really strikes me that Rome Odunze is that guy. I know because I'm looking at all the teams, who could possibly draft him. Could the Falcons be in the same situation? Because as I did a mock draft, I have a mock draft coming out for NFL.com. It'll be coming out on Monday. My mock draft is different. It's not a predictive piece. It's not I think this team is going to go here. It's me acting as a consultant, as one of the Bobs, who just comes in.
Nice.
Remember we'd have like old Jerry.
Great job.
Jerry would always come around the NFL Network studios and be like, you're doing great, Rank. Let me tell you, you know what? I saw you on Total Access. Great job, great energy, and you get like $1 million a year doing that.
Great.
That's what I want to. I want to do that. So I do that for these teams that I go through, and of course, I kind of like tell teams like, "Hey, Chargers, you should go offensive line, or you should do this." And I allowed Rome Odunze to fall. When I was thinking about the Falcons, and I know that people are like, "Well, he could go to the Titans. They could do this." I'm like, any one of these teams, like the Titans, the Falcons. The Titans get Calvin Ridley. The Falcons got Darnell Mooney. Should any of those teams pass on Rome Odunze? Because I understand that they went out and addressed it, but it feels ridiculous for me that any one of those teams would pass him.
You know, I do a series in the offseason, like team needs, right? For which team needs quarterback, which teams needs the most running back help. Last week I did quarterback. This week I did running back. With running back, it's like, you don't put a lot of teams into the critical need or moderate need category because it's just like that position's a little easier to fill. You only have one guy on the field. As I'm sitting there looking at the receiver list, Rank, it's like everybody to some degree could use a receiver. Right? Even the Texans, look at the Texans. They go to trade for Stephon Diggs, even though they had two really good young players last year, Nico Collins and Tank Dell. But it's like, no, we got a rookie quarterback contract on the books. This is when we push in. And I think the Bears are thinking that same way too. That's why you go spend on a Keenan Allen contract. That's why we're even having this conversation about, they got two good receivers, but what if they had one more? So, I mean, for the Falcons, you have Drake London, who definitely needs to be maximized. You have Kyle Pitts, who definitely needs to be maximized. Bijan Robinson, I think, could take another level from what he did last year. But you look at that wide receiver depth chart. Like, I like Darnell Mooney, but in my opinion, he's a 3. Rondale Moore is more of like a gadgety running back, kind of backfield receiver hybrid type. They need another true outside receiver. I think they should probably address their pass rush. I mean,
they could.
Dude, how long have we been saying the Falcons need an edge rusher? I mean, since Jonathan Abraham.
4 years, yeah. It's been at least 4 years. And I know Dallas Turner, Jared Verse, those guys likely will be there. That's who we likely end up with because all the receivers. I'll address that in a second. But I think they should go edge rusher. But again, you got Kirk Cousins. Let's go outscore some people. I think there's gonna be a shift. I think we're gonna see more teams doing this. Going all in on the wide receiver, except for the Chargers. They'll go line. Like, that's one that I feel so confident in. Like, I push back on people all the time because, and we're talking about this. People are like, the Titans. I'm like, like, I wouldn't rule out the Titans doing. Why not? Like, why not? Somebody else. Who else is in there? The Cardinals, obviously. And I forget who. There's another team in the mix, but
the
still,
Giants.
Like,
that's
the Giants.
At Giants. 6. And if I'm the Giants, by the way, like, this is where it's really fascinating at the wide receiver position because, every wide receiver is different, right?
Yeah.
You can have WR next to your name, but we just compared like Rondale Moore, WR, to Drake London on the same depth chart. Those guys couldn't operate in more different universes. And that's extreme because, like I said, Rondale Moore is not even really a wide receiver.
Right.
Kind of different, but still, like, if you're the Giants, I think you have to think about what is the receiver that helps you accomplish like playing better offense this year. Because part of me looks at their room and thinks they definitely need an X, right? They definitely need a on the ball traditional number 1 wide receiver because they've got like Wan'Dale Robinson and Jalen Hyatt. Jalen Hyatt's like a field stretcher. Darius Slayton's a nice player, but he's kind of like there's a hard ceiling there. Darren Waller, is he going to retire? Like, they do kind of need that X receiver, but at the same time, you think about what they are as an offense right now and trying to get something out of Daniel Jones this year. If not him, then maybe you have to play Drew Lock. Do you not just think like, hey, Malik Neighbors, I know he lined up a lot in the slot, but he could beat man coverage. He could beat press coverage. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
We just get him on the field and say, hey, Danny Dimes,
get him the ball.
Throw that guy the ball and like on an in-breaking route, like hit the back of your drop, get that ball in his hands, and he's going to give you yards after catch possibilities. Because to me, that fits stylistically with him as a quarterback rather than I'm throwing low percentage 50-50 balls to one of these big X receivers like Marvin Harrison or Rome Odunze.
It's funny to me because I was justifying why the Giants and Titans should draft a lineman because both those teams have atrocious offensive lines that they really need to fix. Same thing with the Chargers. The depth at the wide receiver position in this draft leads me to believe that there's going to be a lot of guys available in the second and third rounds. Got you like similar to last year with Tank Dell, players like that. Are there guys in this year's draft? Lad McConkey is a name that gets thrown around. Xavier, what's his name from Texas?
Worthy. Mm-hmm.
Xavier Worthy. Excuse me. Thank you. Could you wait then? Could one of these teams, and this is very Bears specific, this is Bears wish casting. Could those teams look at the board and be like, you know what? We could address receiver a little bit later. We could go lineman. Are there guys available? And even for the Bears, if the Bears end up having to take Dallas Turner, is there going to be somebody there in the second round who could end up being a game breaker?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think this class, I'm not going to say it's getting like a little overrated, but because the top three guys are that good. But then again, in my opinion, the 2022 class, I thought there was 3 tier 1 prospects in that class too, with Drake London, Chris Olave, and Garrett Wilson. And so we kind of have a similar situation here where there's 3 tier 1 prospects. I think Brian Thomas Jr. He's going to get a first round grade from me, clear first rounder in tier 2. The rest of the guys, though, I do think it's comparable to like Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison and those guys from last year. Josh Downs is the guy I really liked. But, I mean, just think down the draft board how many good players there were. Jaden Reed, the Packers get him on day 2. Tank Dell, you mentioned. I mean, freaking Puka Nacua on day 3.
Puka Nacua,
there was Josh Downs, I mentioned going to the Colts, like had a really nice rookie season. I think there's going to be guys like that in this class that they might end up because of that result. Like we know that every draft is like a reaction to what's happened the last couple of years. So there might be like, hey, Ricky Pearsall. I love Ricky Pearsall's game. Is he a early second round prospect? I mean, I can justify it. I can see it. I really like his game, but he could be a guy that gets steamed up to that early second round range because teams are looking for that impact receiver. So I really like him. I really like Javon Baker, UCF receiver. He's the guy that I think probably goes maybe third round at the highest, but he's somebody that I think you can get a lot out of. I mean, shoot, Lad McConkey, you brought him up. He's not just, your typical lunch pail, gritty, white slot receiver. This guy wins down the field like he's Tyler Lockett, as a flanker slot type of hybrid. So there's a lot of guys once you get out of that first round range that I really like this year. It just depends on the type. It depends on the flavor. If the Bears are looking for that X receiver, I don't think A.D. Mitchell's going to make it to their pick, but he's kind of like that type of player too. So I think Javon Baker's a nice option for them as maybe later on in the draft. That a guy that is a pure downfield outside receiver allows you to do more with DJ Moore and allows you to play Keenan Allen inside.
What if talk a little bit more, you mentioned Brian Thomas Jr., because I've been thinking about this. If the 3 guys go off the board as we anticipate, is 9 too early for Brian Thomas Jr.? And could the Bears do something? I'm trying to think of the draft order. Like if the Rams wanted to trade up for Brock Bowers, for instance,
sure,
and they moved down to 19 or something like that. Some team move it up. Would Brian Thomas Jr. be a good fit for the Bears?
Yeah, I think so. And I think 9 is rich. I do think 9 is rich for him. He's not going to be like a top 10 worthy prospect to me because, I was doing the reception perception show with James Coe yesterday or a couple days ago. Who knows? Time is a fake construct now this close to the draft. And we were kind of discussing Brian Thomas. And we were talking about all the good things about his game. And then James was like, you're saying all these good things about him. And then at the end of the profile on the site, he's like, yeah, he's probably really good, like number 2 receiver long-term. It felt like I brought him like this close to the edge and then wasn't willing to jump off with him, the full-throated like endorsement of Brian Thomas. But that to me, that's still fine as a first-round pick. Like if he tops out as being a really good kind of number 2 receiver, because to me, and his fit with the Bears would be pretty clean because, again, I think they need a pure outside receiver. You have Keenan Allen as a slot. You have DJ Moore as a guy that can, I think, play all 3 positions. So if you're able to throw Brian Thomas out there, he's going to kind of run that like DK Metcalf route tree his rookie year. In terms of his reception perception sample, 67% of his routes that I charted were a go route, were a curl route, or a slant route. Like that's very, very stripped down, but it's very similar to the DK Metcalf playing early in his career. And I could see that being like hey, we're the Bears. We want to load up on offense. I think trading down from 9, like maybe the Broncos want to come up for a quarterback if they're still on the board.
That's a better,
Yeah, the Raiders, maybe they want to come up for a quarterback if they're still one on the board. I do kind of wonder if there's going to be a team, Cincinnati or now Buffalo, that wants to make like a Julio Jones style trade. We're going to give up a lot of draft capital to get that third receiver, Roma Dunze. Maybe in this scenario, maybe you trade down to 18 with Cincinnati, and then you're the one that takes Brian Thomas there instead of the Cincinnati Bengals. I think actually, if I'm thinking about perfect teams for Brian Thomas to land on, I do think 9 is rich, but I think like what he needs in terms of develop, I think that's a kind of an ideal spot for him.
It's interesting because in my mock draft with the twist, I arranged it so the Bears get Roma Dunze. I was thinking about those very same scenario because I'm not doing trades, so I'm trying not to really get into that because there's too much. Because like the Cardinals could trade down, like if there's 3 quarterbacks that go and somebody wants JJ McCarthy or Drake May or whomever. Like there's a lot of maneuver, and the Chargers could trade down too because they need a lot of help in a lot of spots. So I'm trying to think it. I actually thought, and I know this is probably too rich again, as you said, but like if I'm the Jets and I'm sitting at 10, like you guys are getting fired if you don't win. And I cannot go into a season with Garrett Wilson, Alan Lazard, maybe Mike Williams playing on the MetLife turf. Like
I know.
That's the dumbest, like who's advising this person? I think Brian Thomas Jr. going to the Jets makes a lot of sense for a team that needs to win now. Either that or Brock Bowers.
Yeah, Brock Bowers to me, I think would be perfect for the Jets because he's a tight end nominally. It's very different than the Kyle Pitts stuff to me. Had a good conversation with Derek Klassen about this where you're a fantasy analyst, Rank. The weeping and gnashing of teeth when it comes to Kyle Pitts. But a big problem with Kyle Pitts is like his positional versatility, his positional flexibility.
He doesn't block.
Well, yeah, but that obviously that's a huge thing, and like Brock Bowers probably is not going to be a true like inline blocker either. But the way that Pitts is a matchup nightmare, or at least has been constructed, this like even in the draft process before he landed with Arthur Smith, it was like, man, this guy could go out and like be a X receiver for you. Well, okay, but like. You got diminishing returns when you're taking a guy who could be an inline tight end and you're sticking him out as an ISO receiver against cornerbacks. Like, yeah, he's got a size advantage and maybe a speed advantage, but how many quarterbacks are going to be willing to rip that throw? Matt Ryan was willing to rip it in his rookie year, that was a diminishing Matt Ryan. Then you get into like Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder, like those guys are not taking that throw, nor should they probably be taking that throw. So with Brock Bowers, though, he's not that type of guy. He's the guy that you can line up in the backfield. You can line up in the slot. Like he's more of almost like an H-back type of player. So I think he fits the Jets offense. I mean, whatever the hell the Nathaniel Hackett offense is, I think he stylistically fits with Rodgers and like getting the ball out over the middle of the field. That should be a good fit with him. So Bowers to the Jets makes sense to me. And I'm with you, man. Like, yeah, you addressed wide receiver by adding Mike Williams, but that's a lottery ticket. Even I love the Tyron Smith signing, but he's not a guy that you can count on for 17 games. So even though they made these additions in the offseason, if they decide to double down, or in the case of the offensive line, even like triple, quadruple down, because they added a couple guys from the Ravens as well, that's totally justifiable given where they are as a team building process right now.
Because I keep thinking about that, and I was thinking about like justifiable trades. Like if the Jets, even like last year, the Bears traded down a spot because they weren't going to take Jalen Carter. The Eagles wanted him. Okay, you spot it. You get a 4th round pick. That's another one where I could see Ryan Poles that if he gets into a situation where it's like, well, we missed out on the big 3. We really like Brian Thomas. We could probably move down a spot, have the Jets move up to take Brock Bowers. Or this is one that I thought about too. The Falcons are on the cusp of doing the funniest thing ever. Just take Brock Bowers, because I would love to see the fantasy community implode. Just for the jokes on Twitter, I think it would be worth it. Like Roger Goodell should sort of mandate, like, you know what, Falcons, you have to take Brock Bowers.
I think it'd be funny if he somehow ended up with the Steelers. Not that they like need a tight end because like they have Pat Freiermuth and they have Darnell Washington, but I'm sure you saw the tweet of like Arthur Smith eyeing up Brock Bowers at the Georgia Pro Day, and everybody's like, no, Brock, get out of there. But that I think would be funny for the jokes. Again, not that they really need a tight end, but for obvious reasons, that would be funny.
Go to the UFL if that happens. You know what? I'm trying to think. the way I arranged it, I think I had Brock Bowers ending up with the Raiders somehow. I got to go back and go through the math, which I know they got McDonald last year from Notre Dame. And I'm like, God, if they could run some 12 personnel, they need a lot of help at offensively. I think the Raiders are in a position like, don't go for the quarterback yet. You're close. You're probably going to make the playoffs, but build your team. Like, don't trade a bunch of picks. Don't use it on Michael Penix. Just go out there. Like, what do you think about Michael Penix?
Yeah, I go back and forth with Penix. I think my main stance with him is that if this was 1995, I think he'd be like the first overall pick because even though he ran a 4.5 40, which caught me by surprise because he didn't really run a lot in college. He's not a guy that like, there's a difference between being athletic quarterback and being like a creative quarterback. And to me, like he's a guy that needs to be planted on the ground. He needs to be able to like have a good base, good protection, and launch it downfield. And when he could do that, I mean, shoot, you see the results. Washington's offense was super fun. I've seen a lot of him studying these receivers, especially Roma Dunze. Like when he has a guy like that he can work with, there's a lot of potential there. Like I wouldn't mind the Raiders taking him on day 2. I don't know if I could do it in day 1, but to me, the Raiders are such a hard team to get my head around because on the one hand, I'm with you. Like, yeah, you can probably kick around with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell for a year because those guys have shown you something. I mean, I don't think that quarterback competition has that much juice, but at the same time, is this roster really in a place where it's ready to contend, capital C contend? Mm-hmm. I don't think so. So yeah, you have like kind of a bridge year with those two guys. That's okay. But then at the same time, man, Devontae Adams is on this roster. Like Max Crosby is on this roster. And like, do we really want to waste another year of those guys? Especially Devontae Adams, be like, hey, buddy, yeah, I know you came here to live in Vegas, but also play with your college quarterback. Then we gave you Jimmy G for a year, and you hated that, so we fired the head coach. Yeah, we're going to give you like Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell for a year. If I'm Devontae Adams, I'm kind of just like, what are we doing here? So that's where I think, even if it's not smart from a team-building perspective, I do think there's going to be pressure on this organization to do something else at quarterback beyond the two guys they have there right now.
Good point on that one. That does make a lot of sense.
I don't know if it's a rank. I don't know if it's a good point because I'm not sure if it's sound team-building process. But
hold on, but it's good points. Like these are the conversations that I would love people to have more often, and it stemmed from what the Bears went through this year. Now with the Bears fans, it got really toxic. But even looking at some of these other teams, like if you look at the like the Commanders, for instance, I know they traded Sam Howell, but I was talking about this on Total Access the other night. I'm like, you know what? Like you're not a quarterback away. Like why don't you? Like if some team is willing to trade up and give you a Carolina Panthers type haul for Jaden, I make that trade in an instant. I don't even think about it. And we build a roster, and then we'll go out the following year and either get a veteran quarterback or we'll draft a quarterback then. Like build a roster, and like there but it also makes sense that, and because Mike Emrob pushed back and he's like, well, why don't you just get Jaden Daniels and eventually build around him? I'm like, because you don't get the picks that you would get. Like, I know that everybody loves looking at the Bears and they're saying like, oh, you guys could have had CJ Stroud last year. And I said, that is absolutely correct, but you would not have DJ Moore. Right. You would not have the first overall pick this year. You would be picking, and like your progress would be pushed back. And I was kind of saying, and I like that the Texans pushed in, and I had a very poorly worded tweet today that got ratioed for good reason. I didn't think it through, but I'm like, I meant like Texans, like they really went for it. Like, yeah, okay, yeah, everybody wants to build around a rookie quarterback. I know that's dumb. Yes, thanks, Captain Obvious. Although it does feel like a Rich Eisen tweet, but still, whatever. It doesn't matter.
I gotta go check this tweet out.
Teams
I'll come back and dunk on you too.
No, because I'm kind of like, well, teams want to do that, but I'm like, but the Texans traded back into the first round, like not only drafting CJ Stroud, but they got rid of this. They got rid of Deshaun Watson when they realized like this isn't going to work. Like the Cowboys could do this. The Cowboys, and in effect, the Bears have done this of like, I don't know if this quarterback's going to work. Dump him. We're going to go get somebody else, and we're going to build around him that way. And if the Bears follow the Texans model, they would make sure that they get one of those top 3 wide receivers, because I think it's that important that you go out there and do it. And so that's kind of what I was getting at. And not a lot of teams do it, but there's two different ways. Cause like the Falcons are obviously not doing that. They're going with Kirk Cousins. There's other teams that have veteran quarterbacks. So I think that it's fine to have discussions of like what we said. Both of our ideas for the Raiders are potentially correct. And I don't think there's a wrong answer. And sometimes it doesn't work out, but that's okay because the process, you love talking about the process. The process is sound. The process of drafting a quarterback for the Raiders, I get it. The process of not drafting a quarterback for the Raiders, I get it. It was the same thing with the Bears coming into this offseason, and now they've locked in with Caleb Williams. I did want to circle back, though. By the way, I did want to point out that Ian Rappaport tweeted out that Caleb Williams did do his visit with the Chicago Bears, so everybody can stop freaking out. He wants to play in Chicago. That's never been a thing. He was never going to pull an Eli Manning. Rome Odunze is going to be meeting with the Bears, I think, tomorrow. I don't know if there's any crossover, if they'll do anything like that. But you did mention that Rome Odunze over the last couple of years is your number 3 receiver prospect. And then you just subtly put in there that Marvin Harrison was your first one over the last couple of years.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
By far and away. Because I hear people being like, I kind of want Malik Neighbors over Marvin Harrison. I'm like, what is happening? What are we doing?
Yeah, so I did have to deliberate, like, you know, because again, I've been doing these stacked rankings on reception perception. It's my the last 4 classes stacked together, so 2021 to now. So okay. I try to not take in a lot of bias. So I mean, I put the rankings out before they go to the NFL, so I can't then sit there and say I know who Jamar Chase has become in the NFL, right? Yeah. Like, and he's become a stud, right? Like, he's one of the rare guys that can play all 3 positions and doesn't have a flaw in his game. You know, doesn't have like one thing where you're like, that's what really holds him back. To me, he's good at everything. But that was also his profile coming in, was that he was good at everything, which was why to me he was the number 1 ranked receiver in that class. So that being said, like, I just look at the profiles, like the pre-draft profiles of him versus Marvin Harrison in reception perception, and yeah, like Marvin's got a better profile. And to me, it's not by much. But he does have a better profile, because I think he's actually, and I thought Jamar Chase, like, go back and find the receipts. I thought he was way under credited for his route running, because this is a guy that was lined up as an X receiver on every snap. And, you know, we were all like in the 2020 draft, people, not smart guys like me and you, but dummies out there were like, Justin Jefferson, slot receiver, slot only receiver.
Oh God, yes.
Well, yeah, and while Justin Jefferson's taking every snap of the slot, you know who's taking every snap outside against big boy press man corners? Jamar Chase, and he was awesome, and he was a great route runner doing that. But Marvin Harrison is that guy too. I mean, he is a true X receiver. He's out there on the line of scrimmage. Over the last 4 draft classes, Marvin Harrison has the highest double covered rate that I have, that I've logged for reception perception, 16.8%. The other guys in this class, Rome Odunze and Malik Neighbors, are at like 8%. And 8% is high, especially for an offense like that spreads the field, those 2 offenses, and has multiple other threats. We're talking about a guy that's double covered on like half. I mean, like 2 times that amount in Marvin Harrison. And his success rate is still higher than anybody else who's been at or above 8% in reception perception history. So that's back to like the 2016 class. That is incredible for the amount of extra defensive attention this guy gets. And he's still a fantastic separator against press coverage, man coverage, zone coverage, whatever you want. This guy does it all from a route running perspective. That's not even to then get into, I think he's a great contested catch receiver. I think he brings you way more after the catch than he's given credit for. He's just a very clean evaluation. Like, worst case scenario rank, I think this guy is like Nico Collins, who had almost 1,300 yards last year and 8 touchdowns. And like, that's worst case scenario. I think best case scenario, he could be like a AJ Green type of prospect, you know, a Julio Jones type of player. Like that's what the caliber of player we're talking about with Marvin Harrison is very, very high.
Yeah, I believe that at some point we'll look back at all these debates and everything and be like, why were people doubting Marvin Harrison coming into the league? And one of the biggest receipts I've ever had in anything that I've ever written in my life was the Justin Jefferson in my mock draft with a twist back in that season, of saying that somebody's going to pass on Justin Jefferson and look completely ridiculous. And I remember it was for the Eagles. It was for the Eagles where I said, please do not pass on Justin Jefferson. It is the biggest receipt I've ever had. It is one of the things that the haters never love to go and get. Even last year where I said, CJ Stroud should be the number one quarterback, which nobody talks about, but whatever. I still feel the most proud about that Justin Jefferson thing because I knew it. And I hated it. And I saw it coming, and he was going to the Vikings. I'm like, this sucks because he's going to be there for decades unless they want to trade him. I was trying to get him traded in the offseason. I wrote my annual players who should be traded piece. Like the Vikings, like you did it with Stephon Diggs, like totally trade Justin Jefferson. But they got to go out there. They got to get a quarterback. That's the thing. Like they have to get a quarterback. They're so desperate. Like that's why if I'm like New England or Washington's kind of stuck. But if I'm New England, I look at that too and be like, listen, we're terrible. We have a terrible roster.
Yeah.
The Vikings are dumb enough to give us 2 first-round picks this year and then some. Let's go ahead and do that and make that happen. So I hope they certainly do that and set their roster back a number of years. Hey, Sammy, do we have any questions that we need to? Do you mind, Matt? I'm sorry. Can you stick around for a few more minutes? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure.
If we don't get Rome, would you target Brendan Rice because Caleb knows him well? Yeah, obviously not in the first round, but at some point, what does Brendan Rice project to on the NFL level?
I actually really like Taj Washington, the other USC receiver.
Okay.
If I'm just kind of comparing the two guys, I don't have like a hot take about like, this guy's way better than the other, but I just thought that Caleb Williams showed a lot of faith and a lot of trust in Taj Washington, who's not the biggest receiver in the world, no doubt about it. I mean, he's kind of maybe in that Tyler Scott archetype anyways, the Darnell Mooney archetype of receiver. But if I'm talking about a guy that like when he was under pressure and he really needed to find like that outlet, I felt like Taj Washington had more of those opportunities. So if you're trying to do this guy knows this guy, which, hey, by the way, that has worked in the NFL recently. Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith, Tua, and Jalen Waddle. Obviously, Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. That's been like a little thing that's happened lately. Taj Washington might be a good target for that too.
Wait, is he big enough to play the X though?
No, not at all. Like he would be a guy that you would bring in and you'd have him compete, I think, with Tyler Scott. Like best guy wins for that flanker position in 3 receiver sets, and then in 2 receiver sets when you have multiple tight ends on the field, multiple running backs on the field. Then you have Keenan Allen at flanker and DJ Moore at X. But I think DJ Moore's a guy you can play at X on 90% of his snaps and not think twice about it. But I think it just gives you more flexibility with that player. But no, I don't think Taj Washington is that guy.
Yeah, that's what I would want, a little bit more flexibility. All right, Sammy, how about another question? Adam, Matt, do you see any scenario where the Bears trade out of 9 and get a first next year? I would say that the only reason that happens is if one of these quarterbacks fall. If we went Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and then nobody takes a quarterback, which could happen, then I think the Bears could get a number 1, similar to what happened when they traded, because they gave him a number 1 for Justin Fields back in the day. Is that the only possible way?
Probably. I don't know that I see. Or, again, I think if one of these receivers falls to 9 and a team like Jacksonville, Cincinnati, I mean, Cowboys, could you imagine Cowboys fans? Like they can't run the ball, but they just need another receiver. They don't have their quarterback signed for where you passed this year, but let's get another receiver. But still same vein of teams. Bengals, Jags, Bills. I keep coming back to the Bengals and Bills because they have a lot of picks. They both have double-digit picks this year, and obviously they have future draft capital to play with. That would be a scenario where, again, you need to come up a long way. Certainly for Buffalo, you need to come up a long way from into the 20s to 9.
Yeah.
And Rome Odunze is on the board. Like, you could potentially get a first-round pick out of that deal for sure.
No, I could see that happening, yeah. I don't know if they would do it. Again, to me, like, I don't like the idea of the Bears necessarily trading out of 9. And I forget who brought this up. I think it was Brian Perez who brought it up on the show. It's like, hopefully the Bears are not picking in the top 10 for quite some time.
Right.
Why not go out there and get that elite level talent that would be there at number 9?
Yeah. No, I mean, totally defensible, especially because whether you want to go just all in on the receiver position, which, like we said at the very top, that is a totally more than defensible thing. You want to just load. We're all praising the Texans for loading up the receiver room with CJ Stroud. Why not do it right away with Caleb Williams? Make sure that he doesn't become a failure, because he young quarterback. Kevin Clark always says this from ESPN now, used to be at the Ringer. Young quarterbacks are more often failed than they fail. As the Bears, do what you can do to make sure he doesn't fail. Totally defensible to take a receiver there. You also can add to the offensive line, because that's just a room you can't have too many options because we know what disaster can strike there. And you also need another edge rusher. So if the Falcons don't take Dallas Turner, I think Dallas Turner would be a great like second fiddle to Montez Sweat. That'd be a nice duo there. So, I mean, I don't want to just get you guys' hopes up here, but I really feel like they're in like a can't lose situation regardless of what they do there.
No, I really feel that way as well. And I truly believe the UCLA edge rusher, who is very good, every time I see him in a mock draft, I'm like, nobody's taking him. He's got that medical history from his time at Washington. Like, those guys never get drafted in the first round. Nobody's using a first round pick on him. We've seen it all the time. Like, I remember when it was it Jalen Smith after he got hurt at Notre Dame. You're like, oh, he's still a first. I'm like, no, he's not. Like, nobody's taking him. Miles Jack, that happened to Eddie Jackson. I mean, fell to the fourth round. Like, players like that fall in the draft if you have a bad medical thing. And that's somebody the Bears could be looking at in the second round. I firmly believe, because in my mock draft, I don't even have him going in the first round because I just know the way these NFL teams operate. All right, Sammy, do you have another question? Or if not, Adam, do you have a sleeper pick in this draft that the Bears draft back from the number 9 position? You know what? This is kind of interesting. I know we traded for Ryan Bates. If the Bears are trading back and they're drafting and they're trading back enough, I think Powers Johnson is somebody that I would look at. You think that I mean, like, you're obviously not picking him at 9, but I have him going to the Steelers. And what there it is. You know what? I had him going to the Steelers because, and what I wrote and what will be coming out of my piece, they need a center, number 1. And I also wrote, I go, hey, your quarterback, Justin Fields, was failed in Chicago because they never settled the center position. And I think that hurt them a lot. So I think that's when you talk, we're talking about all these wide receiver options that you could have for him. I think taking care of him with the center would also be not a bad idea.
100%. I think that would be super smart. And you hear mixed things with Jackson Powers Johnson. Some people love him. Other people say, yeah, the league's not as high on him as the media is. And, sometimes that's true. Sometimes on draft day, it takes one team, right? Like, it takes one team to be super high on him. And I think from Pittsburgh's perspective, we're talking about them. They definitely need a center. I like that matchup there. He's a guy that's just like a nasty player, right? Like, he's aggressive. He throws it around. That does seem to fit what they would want to do at this point. And obviously, I think with Justin Fields, you need to give him protection. Like, because sack-prone quarterbacks are always going to be sack-prone quarterbacks. Like, it doesn't matter. Sacks are a quarterback stat more often than they're not. But you can definitely increase the margin for error here with these guys if you give them good quality protection and guys to get the ball out. Because I think the Steelers are definitely taking a receiver on day 2. They need to replace Deontay Johnson, but you don't have to do that in the first round. You could fortify the offensive line in the first round. You could do that then on day 2.
When have the Steelers ever drafted a receiver in the first round? Lewis Lips? I mean, like, and all the guys, and whomever they take, you're like, well, that's who I'm picking in fantasy. Like, I'm drafting that guy for sure. I know that George Pickens hasn't quite worked out yet, but he will. He'll come around.
Yeah.
But you think
he's good? No, he's good. I think him and Justin Fields actually are a very good stylistic match. I will say though, I'm a little kind of push back on this. Like, the Steelers draft history with receivers is a little bit like more myth than reality. Only because you do look at they've had some real big swings and misses on day 2.
Really?
They've had some really solid. I mean, your boy Chase Claypool. I'm sorry, the Bears gave you a good pick back for him. That's still a miss, bro. That still goes down as a miss for the Steelers. Okay. Lima Swede, way back in 2008.
Oh, God, yes.
Sammy Coates. Do you remember Sammy Coates from Auburn? Marcus Wheaton from Oregon State. These are guys they've taken on day 2.
Wheaton.
Yeah, so not infallible are the Pittsburgh Steelers. Certainly they've had their misses, but they've also had really good hits too. Deontay's a hit. I think George Pickens is a hit. I mean, obviously you go back to Martavis Bryant. He never had that big breakout season, but he's a hit. Juju's a hit, even if he got, is kind of flamed out at this point. He was a good player for them for a little while. So they've definitely had their hits, but just like every team, you're going to have your misses as well.
I guess when you hit so well, when the hits are so big, guys like Antonio Brown in the 5th round.
That's the thing. Yeah. Antonio Brown's doing a lot of heavy lifting for the myth of this. And even like, dude, Emmanuel Sanders, really good player, but he had his best years not in Pittsburgh. So do we give them credit?
Worse.
Yeah. Do we give them credit for that or what? Because they were never able to maximize Emmanuel Sanders. Then he goes to Denver and he has like 1,400 yards with Peyton Manning. So I don't know. It's
interesting. Yeah, that's a good one. You know what? Thank you for bringing that to my attention because, if that had been the Bears, you would have known that for sure. But yeah, we do sort of just give the Steelers all the credit in the world for all the wide receivers that they draft. I'm going to start bringing that up. Sorry, Steelers, because I'm almost, although, Justin Fields is there now. So I want to make sure that, he's taken care of. And if he plays enough, we get a 4th round pick. I'll feel better about that.
You're so getting that 4th round pick. There's like,
I sort of like Russell, though. I still think Russell can play. I'm clueless, apparently.
I don't know. Maybe. We'll see.
I mean, the Steelers, when the Steelers made the move, like, it made sense. Like $1 million, I'm like, all right, he can play. And then you got Justin in there. Like, I don't know. Russell Wilson and Justin Fields in that quarterback room. That's going to be very interesting. And any more? And Sammy, is there another question or two? Or just one? One good one. Would we all be shocked if the Bears trade? Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's not happening. Don't even put that in the universe, Matthew. Not you, Matthew, the other Matthew. We're not going to be doing that. So the Bears are going to be taking Caleb Williams, rest assured. And of course, this weekend, we'll discuss that more with Cynthia Freeland, and we'll get her take on that with the whole Jaden Daniels, which is fine. Like, people are going to, I don't know. And I don't think she does it for clicks. I think she really, truly believes it. But sometimes I'm like, girl, no. No, it's just not happening. Just certain things. I got to say that to my kids sometimes. No. Here's the thing, though. But in any event, I want to thank you for being here. We really appreciate you taking the time to be here with us this evening. Now, Yahoo will be having a lot of intensive draft coverage. I know your situation is still up in the air. You might be in Los Angeles. You might be doing it from your home. And, of course, all the great work that you're doing with Reception Perception. Can you tell everybody where they can find you on the social media platforms? And tell us a little bit more about Reception Perception.
Yeah, Matt Harmon _BYB is any social you're looking for. Yahoo Fantasy Football Show. We've got you covered with great draft coverage. 3 series we're running right now leading up to the draft. So we would love everybody to subscribe to that podcast. We got a lot of great guests coming on as well.
Well, I saw you had the Field Yates.
Dude, Field. Shout out to Field Yates, man. I texted him. I'm like, hey, can you do the show with me? Whatever. He's like, yeah, I can do it on Friday. I'm moving that weekend, but I can do it on Friday. I'm like, dude, do you not like you're crazy. You're doing the show while you're moving. But I mean, shout out to him. He did do it. So I'll have to have you on at some point in the summer as well, Rank. That would be awesome. But Reception Perception, yeah. I mean, we have the podcast, of course. It's good. It's like your gateway into Reception Perception, but the website, receptionperception.com. We have the Keenan Allen profile up. We have all these players we talked about. The top draft prospects are up right now. More and more are coming every single week. I ruined my entire day because the Stephon Diggs trade happened. I gotta get the profile up on him for tomorrow morning. So a lot of great receiver content at Reception Perception. I'd love for everybody to check out.
All right. And I implore everybody to do it as well. This is something that I actually pay for. This is not me begging my friend again for a free copy of this. I do pay my own hard-earned money because I think it's important to celebrate and endorse and to support people in this industry. So if you're looking for I know there's a lot of draft things that you can subscribe to. Reception Perception is the one that I would personally recommend. So I want to thank you for being here. So for Matt Harmon, I'm Adam Rank. Thank you so much for being here. We'll see you over the weekend. Until that time, bear down. And Sammy, go ahead and play us out.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.